Okay, welcome back. This is webcast number 2 with Mrs. Brady. Welcome. We're going to tackle synthetic division. This video shouldn't last more than 10 or 12 minutes. By the end of it, you're going to be able to use this modified division that we kind of made up. What is synthetic division? It's a shortcut to polynomial division. Please write this down in your notes. It's a shortcut that we use to figure out factors of polynomials. Why? So we can eventually find their zeros. What we do is we use synthetic division to see if a binomial is a factor of the polynomial, and like I just said, it helps us find the zeros. If the remainder is 0 after we do all our work, then the binomial is a factor of the polynomial, and then we can move on to finding the rest of the zeros. And last but not least, synthetic division can only be used for a linear term. What does this mean? I cannot use this. I cannot use this for, let me say, only for an x plus 1. Or maybe a 3x minus 2. I cannot use it for a factor that might be x squared plus 2. Whoops. What's happening? X squared plus 2. Or maybe my factor is x squared minus 1. I can't use it for these. Okay, so for a linear factor, it's these two items. All right, let's scroll down here and take a look at what I'm talking about. Yesterday, we worked on polynomial division. And what we did is we set it up using our standard division algorithm, which we learned way back in elementary school. So what we did here is we said, what do I multiply x by to turn them into x squared? Well, that was an x. And then we did some multiplication, and we said x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. And then we came through here, and what we ended up doing was we subtracted. So when we subtract, we change the signs. That goes to 0, and 5 minus 2 gives me a 3x. We dropped down the 6, and what happened next was we said, what do I multiply x by to turn it into 3x? That was a plus 3. 3 times x gave us 3x. 3 times 2 gave us a plus 6. But remember, with our division algorithm, we come through and we subtract and we change our signs. So I got a remainder of 0. Synthetic division, we can do this the same way. I'm going to write down what it looks like. What we do, I'm going to erase this now. And what we do is, I'm going to leave my answer up there. We want to get x plus 3. So let me go write that back in. This should be an x plus 3. Well, we use this, and we just write down the coefficients on the number. So the invisible number in front of the x term is a 1. What's in front of the x squared term is a 1. What's in front of the x term? A 5, and then a 6. And then we take the opposite of what is inside that x plus 2. That opposite is a minus 2. We're going to put that here. And this is how we set it up, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so that's the start. We're going to practice the rest of the problems, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. All right, next slide. Your learning target for today, by the end of this lesson, you are going to be able to divide polynomials using synthetic division. Where is this in your textbook? Page 303, and that's our goal. Okay? Moving on. We are going to use synthetic division to divide this big cubic polynomial. We're going to divide this cubic polynomial by this factor. by x plus 3. How do I set this up? I take the coefficients. There's an invisible 1 here. I write them here. There's a 13. I write the 13 here. There's a 46 and a 48. And I write them in order. This should be written in descending order. My exponents are written in descending order. The other thing I do is I use the opposite of the number that is inside of there that I write outside. So this becomes a minus 3. All right, now I go through, and my first step is I always draw an arrow straight down. This number 1 I copy, and I write right down there. Now I do some multiplication. What is negative 3 times 1? It's minus 3. And what do I do as I go down? I add these numbers. 13 minus 3 gives me a 10. Now, when I come through here, I take negative 3 times 10. That gives me a negative 30. I'm going to add going down. What's 46 minus 30? That is 16. And then I go through and I do this multiplication. What's negative 3 times 40? I'm sorry. What's negative 3 times 16? That gives me 48, a negative 48, and that goes to 0. So if you look, this answer right here is just 3 numbers. Doesn't kind of make any sense. But if we go back and say, what is my original equation? It was a cubic. My answer is going to be 1 degree less. So my answer is going to have start with a degree of 2. So I can write this as 1x squared plus 10x plus 16. And what that says is x plus 3 times x squared plus 10x plus 16 equals the thing that I started with. The thing that I started with was x cubed plus 13x squared plus 46x plus 48. So my quotient was this. My remainder was 0. So x plus 3 is definitely a factor of that cubic equation. Okay? Next slide. We're going to divide using synthetic division. This one I didn't set up for you with everything pre-written. So what we need to do, we need to write our upside down division bar is really what we're writing here. And what I'm going to write on the inside, this is in order. There's an x cubed, an x squared, an x, and a constant. So I can write all of those coefficients in order. I'm going to write 1. Then I'm going to write a minus 14. Then I'm going to write a positive 51. And then I'm going to write a negative 52. Next, I'm going to move this down a little bit so I have room to write underneath. Okay, I draw an arrow and I write that 1 down. I need to take care of this. That's a plus 2. When I do synthetic division, I write it out here as a minus 2. So now I go through and I say, what is negative 2 times 1? Well, negative 2 times 1 is a negative 2. And remember, as I move down here, I'm adding. I'm losing my pen. Okay, what's negative 14 minus 2? That's a negative 16. Then I come through and I say, what's a negative 2 times 16? Negative 16, that's a positive 32, and I add going down. So I get here, this is a 2, I'm sorry, this is a 3, and that's an 8. So I have 83 here. And then I go through and I say, well, what is negative 2 times 83? And that is going to be a negative 166, right? Then I'm going to come through and add these two numbers. So I get negative 166 minus 52. I end up adding them to get a bigger negative. So I get an 8. I get a negative 218. So that's my remainder. My remainder is this negative 218. What's my quotient? Well, I started with an x cubed, so what that means is this is an x squared minus 16x plus 83, remainder negative 218. So what I can say is x plus 2 is not a factor. It's not a factor. Okay, let's move on to our next example. We are going to divide x cubed plus x plus 10 by x plus 2. I want you to notice here that I'm missing an x term. So we're going to add, I'm missing an x squared, so we're going to add it in with a 0 coefficient. So the way I set this up, that is going to be a minus 2 on the outside. I'm going to draw my upside down division bar. I'm going to put in 1, whoops, let me erase that. That's supposed to be the number 1. This should be 1 x cubed. I don't have any x squared, so that's a 0 there. I've got 1x and I've got the number 10. My first step is to draw an arrow down and copy that number right here. What's minus 2 times 1? That's a minus 2. I add going down. So 0 minus 2 is a negative 2. I multiply, that's a positive 4. 1 plus 4 becomes 5. And a negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10. And I get a 0. So my remainder is 0. And what this translates to is x squared minus 2x minus 5 times x plus 2 results in my original equation. Okay, so 2 is a factor of that polynomial. I'm sorry, x plus 2 is. Okay, next slide. We're going to divide using synthetic division. I'm going to skip this and I'm going to have you guys go to the practice that I want you to do before you come to class. Your entrance ticket to class. I want you to do problem A and problem B on a slip of paper. And I'm going to check it when you walk into class. Your code word when you enter is METS, and you should have those two problems done for me. Thank you and have a good night, and I will see you in the morning.